Yes, hello. I'm here with Ian again, and we're going to read and discuss the Grimm brothers story, Godfather Death. A poor man had 12 children and was forced to work night and day to give them even bread. When therefore the 13th came into the world, he knew not what to do in his trouble, but ran out into the great highway, and resolved to ask the first person whom he met to be godfather. The first to meet him was the good God, who already knew what filled his heart, and said to him, Poor man, I pity thee. I will hold thy child at its christening, and I will take charge of it and make it happy on earth. The man said, Who art thou? I am God. Then I do not desire to have thee for a godfather, said the man. Thou givest to the rich and leavest the poor to hunger. Thus spoke the man, for he did not know how wisely God apportions riches and poverty. He turned therefore away from the Lord and went farther. Then the devil came to him and said, What seekest thou? If thou wilt take me as a godfather for thy child, I will give him gold in plenty and all the joys of the world as well. The man asked, Who art thou? I am the devil. Then I do not desire to have thee for godfather, said the man. Thou deceivest men and leadest them astray. He went onwards, and then came Death, striding up to him with withered legs, and said, Take me as godfather. The man asked, Who art thou? I am Death. I make all equal. Then said the man, Thou art the right one. Thou takest the rich as well as the poor, without distinction. Thou shalt be godfather. Death answered, I will make thy child rich and famous, for he who has me for a friend can lack nothing. The man said, Next Sunday is the christening. Be there at the right time. Death appeared as he had promised, and stood godfather quite in the usual way. When the boy had grown up, his godfather one day appeared and bade him go with him. He led him forth into a forest, and showed him a herb which grew there, and said, Now shalt thou receive thy godfather's present. I make thee a celebrated physician. When thou art called to a patient, I will always appear to thee. If I stand by the head of a sick man, thou mayest say so with confidence that thou wilt make him well again. And if thou givest him of this herb, he will recover. But if I stand by the patient's feet, he is mine, and thou must say that all remedies are in vain, and that no physician in the world could save him. But beware of using the herb against my will, or it will fare ill with thee. It was not long before the youth was the most famous physician in the whole world. He had only to look at the patient, and he knew his condition at once, and if he would recover or must needs die. So they said of him, and from far and wide people came to see him, sent for him when they had any ill one, and gave him so much money that he soon became a rich man. Now it so befell that the king became ill, and the physician was summoned, and was to say if recovery were possible. But when he came to the bed, Death was standing by the feet of the sick man, and the herb did not grow which could save him. If I could but cheat Death for once, thought the physician, he is sure to take it ill if I do. But, as I am his godson, he will shut one eye. I will risk it. He therefore took up the sick man and laid him the other way, so that now Death was standing by his head. Then he gave the king some of the herb, and he recovered and grew healthy again. But Death came to the physician, looking very black and angry, threatened him with the finger, and said, Thou hast overreached me. This time I will pardon it, as thou art my grandson. But if thou venturest it again, it will cost thee thy neck, for I will take thee thyself away with me. Soon afterwards, the king's daughter fell into a severe illness. She was his only child, and he wept day and night, so that he began to lose sight of his eyes. And he caused it to be made known that whoever rescued her from death should be her husband and inherit the crown. When the physician came to the sick girl's bed, he saw Death by her feet. He ought to have remembered the warning given by his godfather, but he was so infatuated by the great beauty of the king's daughter and the happiness of becoming her husband that he flung all thought to the winds. He did not see that Death was casting angry glances on him, and he was raising his fist in the air and threatening him with his withered fist. He raised up the sick girl and placed her head where her feet had lain. Then he gave her some of the herb, and instantly her cheeks flushed red, and life stirred afresh in her. When Death saw that for a second time he was defrauded of his own property, he walked up to the physician with long strides and said, "All is over with thee, and now the lot falls on thee," and seized him so firmly with his ice cold hand that he could not resist, and led him into a cave below the earth. There he saw how thousands and thousands of candles were burning in countless rows, some large, others half-sized, others small. Every instant some were extinguished, and others again burnt up, so that the flames seemed to leap hither and thither in perpetual change. "See," said Death, "these are the lights of men's lives. The large ones belong to children, the half ones to married people in their prime, the little ones belong to old people. But children and young folks likewise have often only a tiny candle." "Show me the light of my life," said the physician, and he thought that it would be still very tall. Death pointed to a little end which was just threatening to go out, and said, "Behold, it is there." "Ah, dear godfather," said the horrified physician, "light a new one for me. Do it for love of me, that I may enjoy my life, be king and the husband of the king's beautiful daughter." "I cannot," answered Death. "One must go out before a new one is lighted." "Then place the old one on a new one that will go on burning at once when the old one has come to an end," pleaded the physician. Death behaved as if he were going to fulfill his wish, and took hold of a tall new candle. But as he desired to revenge himself, he purposely made a mistake in fixing it, and the little piece fell down and was extinguished. Immediately the physician fell on the ground, and now he himself was in the hands of Death.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. I thought, did you see the note in the University of Pittsburgh University um, copy where it said that in the original Grimm's tale, um, the story ended with the physician being shown the life lights of people on Earth. But in the second edition, they added the conclusion that we just read of the physician's
Oh,
candle being put out while Death is pretending to light a new one. And the Grimms got that one apparently from this author, Friedrich Gustav Schilling.
I had not seen that. That is interesting.
Mm,
Um, hmm. Well, I don't know if you want to start by analyzing the end of the story, but that
mm,
is pretty cool because
mm.
it's a very different story if he just shows him the candles, and that's kind of the end of the story.
Yeah.
It doesn't have as much of an ending, but the way it does end here, I feel is a little, no, it feels a little strange. Um, but yeah, did we want to start with that, or we want to wait until we kind of work
I think you're
our way
right.
down?
Just to do that at the end, and yeah, save that
Okay.
for the end.
Okay. Yeah, because there's a couple of things I think I could probably say about that. I'm sure you have something too.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
how did you like this story?
I liked it. I liked it. There's you sent some pictures, some like I don't know paintings or images or something, and there was one with that we were sort of talking about before the recording of this looming skull over the physician with these sort of like half closed eyes that gave it this kindly expression,
Yeah.
and there's something about death being friendly that I think I don't know. I really love it. That's sort of how I look on death myself, I think. Probably influenced by Neil Gaiman's Sandman series.
Oh, wow.
The the
Oh,
the death in that is always it's she's a female figure, and she's always very kind and caring every time she's shown.
huh.
And that really sort of changed my look because I read those growing up, right? So it sort of changed my look on the way I understand death and gave me sort of, death can be carrying. Life is difficult, and death is, sort of shepherding us onto whatever, if anything, happens next.
Mm.
But it's not necessarily the creeping, malicious, monster with the scythe or the ghost at the end of the what is it? The Dickens, the Christmas um
Oh, okay. Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol. Yeah, where
Mm.
like the ghost of Christmas future is all shadowed and dark and pointing and skeletal and
Mm.
you and the death and you know, uh, I just think I like these friendly deaths.
Yeah. And that seems like a healthier way to think about it. I mean, we naturally have a fear of death. And so is it like the idea of thinking of it as, first of all, it's personified,
Right.
and then here it's a godfather, so it's someone who kind of like watches out for you, who's there kind of in place of your parents in case anything happens to them. He gives him a gift that helps him throughout his life, and yeah, and the physician feels so close to him that he can make requests of him and kind of even abuse an agreement that they had, thinking, he's like my friendly uncle, he'll understand, he'll get over it, he'll indulge me.
Yeah. And he even does too, which I thought was pretty interesting um for the story.
Yeah,
What did you think about the beginning? Because I was kind of taken aback by God showing up as like the
yeah,
first option.
yeah,
Um, like the father, the physician guy's father is, clearly not aware of birth control, or is against it. I mean, 13 kids is a lot of freaking kids. Um, I feel sorry for his wife. Um, but they keep having the kids. And so
yeah,
he's so panicked at the last one that he just runs out onto the street.
yeah,
It's like I've run out of people I can ask to, godparent my children. I just got to find some random stranger.
yeah,
Uh, and the first random stranger is God.
yeah.
And he says no. And I don't know. What do you?
So I mean, I sort of thought maybe a little bit like you're implying that this whole story has kind of a comedic element to it. Comedy in the little bit older sense of, I mean, also funny, but in the sense of like comedies as opposed to tragedies are when your problems are kind of solved at the end in kind of like a complex, but maybe uh, not that realistic way. And so that's why, and that evolved into like a silliness or funniness, I guess. That's my basic idea of the evolution of comedy. But but yeah, I thought that to me that was a comedic touch. It's like, so there's this guy that's working really hard, and like you're saying, he's working in more than one way really hard, just very energetic, but on the end of his, I'll try not to make it like a sexual pun or something, but at the end of his rope, it's
Right.
and then yeah, he runs out and it's like I need help. Half the town's a godfather to my kid. I don't know what to do. We need to watch after him. And it's like, uh, who are you? I am God. All right. Well, no, you're not. uh, okay. Go
Yeah.
on to the next thing. I'm gonna try
You
to do a miracle.
It's like you're looking for a godfather. Here's God.
Yeah.
Maybe bring those two together. I don't know,
Yeah.
um, but no, he says, no, you give to the rich and let the poor starve, which shows sort of in the very least, a lack of faith or a lack of understanding of
Yeah.
the requirements of creating and maintaining a world. I mean, not
Yeah.
that I understand them, but like, I don't think you get to really genuinely go to God and be like, hey, you're not being fair. And so, screw you, because my understanding of what you're doing is totally correct.
That's right.
And clearly you're in the wrong here. Like,
That's right.
I think that by definition negates that you're talking about what the word God is meant to symbolize.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Di- I thought that sort of showed his arrogance, and then he's not so much just a man who is in a desperate situation, but a man who has maybe been trying, who has kind of gotten himself into this situation. You were talking about how many kids he has, and he's working really hard, but he's kind of, yeah, dug his own grave, not to kind of foreshadow death too much, but yeah, I mean, there's something about uh like the entrepreneurial spirit, or maybe it's not entrepreneurialism, but it's something about maybe like when you work really hard and but you're not trying to give up the idea of the results, kind of, you're not tied too much to the results. Maybe that's the good entrepreneurial spirit, but I have an idea of this sort of like you're trying to control the results too much and you're resenting like not getting the results that you wanted. And maybe there's this controlling aspect of this where the guy's arrogant and he thinks he knows how the world should be run, when he turns God down that way. And there's this idea like the Godfather isn't just someone who's like a good person who will look after my son in some way, have some proper relationship of Godfather to him, but like maybe this idea, I'm trying to guarantee, the result here. And this reminds me
Hmm.
of some other kind of fathers, like the merchant in the King of the Golden Mountain, and especially the one that we did, the golden, what was it called? The the spirit in the bottle,
Yeah,
where
where they with the woodcutter. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I think in that one too, wasn't the idea like he's like really hardworking, but kind of poor, and he's really like he's got his nose too close to the grindstone, and where he can't kind of let go of the results and kind of trust God or trust the world, or just, yeah, not think about daily bread only in his life.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
kind of transfers to the son in both stories, who become a very successful physician, although with like a
Yeah.
different outcome in like the two stories.
Yeah, I forgot that the in the spirit in the bottle, he ends up being a physician too. Huh, that is interesting. Um, but no, I'm just to come back to this one. I'm completely with you on that because I was thinking when I was reading this, I was thinking, like if God appears before you and says that God will hold your child at baptism and care for him and make him happy,
Yeah,
and your response is like to focus on the fact that you're poor and that there are rich people,
yeah,
like you're missing something. You're too he's too focused on class or income or entrepreneurship, money, expectations, all that stuff that you were talking about. Like he's sort of blinded by that. He's blinded to what it actually means to have. Because I think anybody reading this rationally, clear-headedly would be like, why wouldn't you want God as your godparent? Like that
yeah,
seems kind of obvious. And then even later on, we can touch on this more later, but just because it applies, he gets death, which is still pretty cool to be the godparent. Like that's still pretty
yeah.
rare. And then death even says, "I will make your child rich and famous, for he has in me a friend who cannot fail," or something like that.
Mm,
Um, and the man doesn't say thank you. He says, "It's next Sunday. Be on time. Don't be late." So he's very focused on like efficiency and like what has to happen and his view, his whole like perspective. And he's not seeing any of the reality of what's happening to him. He's just sort of like he has this need, he has this concern about money, and he has this need to like have everything turn out okay. And
yeah,
that's all he can see. So yeah, I think we're definitely looking at like not the best father figure, or at least a father figure with some very seriously painted issues.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I mean, he's given these huge gifts, these three supernatural figures that all offer them what he needs, like far more than what he could expect or hope for. And then he's already, like you said, thinking of his needs, trying to order it all according to that. And yeah, that's not a good strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. Not at all. Um, Another thing I was thinking of when it comes to, the first person he comes across as being God, there's especially in creative work, but in spirituality in general, there's this sort of idea of like first thought, best thought, like when you're writing, like the
Mm,
the thing that comes to you right away, if you're able to act on it and not impulsively, but like, oh, I had this idea, like for me, if I have an idea to write something and I can actually have the idea and like be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write and kind of let it go with that first impulse, then it'll usually kind of, I don't want to say usually come out good, but there's something that can happen there that if I'm like, oh, I'm gonna not right now, I'm gonna wait till next time, it doesn't go as well. So there's something about like the immediacy of God in the moment without having to think about the moment or something that I don't know, just the idea that he has a need and God responds to him first, and he's too blind to see that God's responding. And I think that
yeah.
that could speak to it, to the extent that anyone believes in God. I think that could speak to kind of our relationship with that sort of deity or that form of that whatever it is that fill in the blank, whatever the word is meant to, like, whatever experience the word is meant to kind of point to, symbolize. Um,
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it in terms of creativity. That's interesting. Um, so first thought, best thought is, yeah, it's kind of the spirit moves you. You should trust it. And trust is a synonym for faith, which we often apply to a deity. You can think of it like the muse, a deity is speaking to you. Um, but then you don't want to be, so what's that you do have to contain that though, right? Like um you don't want to be too narcissistic because later on you could, whatever you wrote down, you might not want to edit it at all. You might not, you might have an editor outside or inside your head, and they might be telling you some good advice. So how do you encapsulate that idea that like the spirit gives you something, but then you also, it also requires editing later on, right? I mean, that's
mhm.
true of pretty much all like creative artists, right? Like
Yeah,
even
yeah,
Mozart and Beethoven and everybody like had a lot of edits and stuff, right? I mean, it's not like it just came out and it was perfect.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think to sort of map it onto this story, like the guy has a need, and the first response to the need is God. It's not just so if we have a desire to be creative and we have this the first response in the moment, you're creating something, right? You're not editing it, as you said, you edit it later.
Right. Oh,
So it like when it comes time to edit, then you sit down and you edit. When it comes time to write or create, you don't wait, you don't second guess. You just you let the creation process happen,
right.
and then you're like, okay, that's all out there. Um, I managed to get it up and out and through me. And then once you have the sort of raw materials, then you can kind of polish and refine and fix. And maybe the whole thing doesn't work. Maybe, who knows? But but yeah, just being able to be present with what's needed in the moment without sort of stepping outside of that moment and thinking about the future or the past, or bringing your stories of well, you only help rich people, so I don't want any,
Yeah.
that sort of bringing that assumption about life to the moment can kind of trip you up.
Yeah,
Um,
that
yeah.
seems to map onto the story well, right? Like God doesn't come to him and say, "This is how your son's going to be." He just makes an offering and I will hold your child at baptism. I will care for him and make him happy on earth. It's these general sort of guarantees that everything will be good. Like, and he has the power and the knowledge to do that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you
Yeah.
should trust that when you hear that voice.
Yeah. Yeah. And to sort of change the lens on it a little bit, I think there's also an element of like there the just the complicated nature of humanity that maybe we're doomed to never agree to have God be the Godfather. Like that's just kind of the human condition, that kind of blindness. I don't know. Um, I don't want to criticize this poor man too much. Um, and I don't want to act like that kind of perfection is necessarily something we should assume we have failed if we don't achieve it, you know, the perfection of, oh, well, God said it and God came and I said yes and it worked out and everything was perfect. And if I just done that, it would have been perfect. Like that's dangerous territory too. So,
Mm,
I mean, that's why I like these stories. There's so many different ways you can take the pieces,
mm,
like, use them to illuminate different parts of life.
mm.
Um, and then the devil shows up, right?
Yeah.
And there's a little less because God says, well, the man says, the father says why he doesn't want God. And there's some commentary about, oh, the man did not know how wisely God divides out wealth and poverty. Then he turned away from the Lord and went on his way. Um, but when it comes to the devil, he just says, "Who are you?" "I'm the devil." And he says, "Well, no, I don't want you to be the Godfather because you deceive people and you lead them astray." And that's it. There's no, I mean, you're not gonna have like someone trying to say, "Oh, he should have agreed to the devil
Yeah.
being the Godfather," although that would probably make for an interesting story. Because like,
Yeah. I mean, I took that as partially just like the politics of the day, Christian civilization. Maybe you might think of it differently. But I just took that as like they wanted to kind of say this guy's, stupid for saying no to God. Like we're not being sacrilegious here. So, but
yeah, no, I mean that makes sense. That's certainly, if you're going to bring in God, you want to also bring in the devil, I think, within the worldview that you're talking about. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to me because of kind of where things go with death later on. It makes me wonder what the devil might symbolize. Um, in that, like, would have, and it's implied that God is wise and divides out wealth and poverty well,
mm,
if you have the knowledge to see it, if you have the ability to see it that way. But
hmm
the man turns away. Um, and so then, the devil, if the devil's meant to symbolize a different kind of choice that the father also turns away from, like what kind of gifts would the devil have given? He says gold and all the joys of the world.
hmm
God just says make him happy on earth, which I'd honestly rather be happy on earth than gold and joys.
hmm
Um, yeah. So I mean, I guess it's sort of implying that the walking away from the devil was a good thing, just because there's no qualifiers like, oh, like he didn't see how wily and clever the devil could be,
mm,
you know. Like if you imagine having the devil as your godfather and the devil genuinely caring about you and not trying to lead you into evil, but like trying to help you have a good life, like a good godparent would, a good uncle, whatever.
mm,
Like death ends up being. Um, the devil could help him. Devil's very wily, very, trickstery. He could use that kind of to his advantage. He knows secrets. He knows men's weaknesses. He could use that to his advantage.
mm,
Um, sort of, if you're not going to rely on goodness as your protector, if you rely on the devil as your protector, maybe it does some other things for you, you know.
mm,
But depends on how you picture the devil, because if you have the idea of the actual devil, like something that a force that is entirely evil and that leads
mm,
men astray and is designed to just sort of corrupt your soul to whatever ends that might mean, then yeah, clearly you don't want that kind of devil as your godfather because he's not going to do you any favors. He's just going to cause you a lot of problems. So how to kind of differentiate? I kind of wish they had a little more description of the devil,
Hmm.
but he doesn't have enough of a presence here to really make him much of a character. So I should probably stop talking about
Oh, okay. Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I
I don't
mean, it
know.
is uh, slightly different, but it is an interesting structure that they have, that they have the three supernatural characters, the God, the devil, and death. I thought that kind of, yeah, it's so I've never really, I can't think of another fairy tale that this exists in. And I thought it is an interesting structure because I'm trying to, as I'm reading the story, I'm trying to figure out the guy or the theme of the story. And he said he it seems like he says no to God because he doesn't really want the boy to be happy and to be thrown to his fate, whatever his fate is. He doesn't like that he might be rich, he might be poor, and he's likely to be poor because I'm poor already. It's this kind of that feeling. And
Mm-hmm.
with the devil, he- who offers worldly riches, but he says you deceive. I can't trust you, and you lead people astray. And then he goes to death, and death does have something good to offer. He offers fairness. So there's like chance, there's the unknown with both God and the devil. You can't trust the devil, and with God too, you can't trust that he will give me what I think is good. Like
Mm-hmm.
he
I mean,
will.
clearly the man doesn't trust, so you're right in that
Mm,
regard. Yeah. Yeah.
mm, mm. And yeah, for the devil, for death, like it's interesting for me. I took it like, so this man's good is fairness, which seems to be with his what I'm reading as his ethos of like, I do this thing sort of like the woodcutter in the other story. I do all this work and I get all this reward. And this is like I can calculate everything in life, just like I'm trying to calculate this thing, even though I've thrown myself out into the street and I'm trying to, I've essentially put my son's fate, for the Godfather at least, up to fate, up, and I've been given like a lot of opportunity and I still don't trust, and I'm still trying to like calculate everything down to the numbers. um but yeah, I thought that was just interesting, that kind of direction that the story took. And then I think it goes into an interesting kind of comedic tone of that death is the thing that he trusts. And maybe there's some kind of interesting implication. And maybe it's a little like what we were talking about before the recording of, it's it's good in some way to like personify death as this avuncular uncle kind of figure that you can not, be in terror of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I mean, he's definitely painted that way. And just to kind of go back, just to sort of echo what you said, the death makes everyone equal does reveal a lot about the father's morals or standards or the way he looks at life. It's just like, oh, right, okay, good. You're fair. Like, I'm no better than that rich person. He's no better than me. Like, we all end up dead. Like, I can count on that. There's something sort of objective and reliable about that choice. Like, he doesn't have enough faith to follow God, because he's sort of blinded. This implies he's not seeing clearly, but he has enough clear-headedness to not follow the devil because he knows he can't trust the devil. So he's kind of stuck, maybe death is sort of like the middle answer of like, at least you know that this is reliable. Death happens to everybody. There's not any way. Well, here's interesting. If death's fair and makes everybody equal, the son ends up negating that by taking taking the experience of death away from the king and the princess. So he
Yeah.
ends up like, yeah, he ends up, if his father's like, oh, death makes everyone equal, And Death's like, yes, I make everyone equal. And then later on in the story, the son's like, we're gonna spare the king and the princess. We're gonna make them somehow more important than other people because they should die, but like, no, I'm gonna make it so that they don't. And so he's actually breaking, like he's going against the standard that both the father and Death sort of set forth at the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
So that's pretty, I'm just seeing that right now. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And he does it for his own interest, right? Which is a big no-no.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's something else I wanted to kind of dive into, which was sort of like the main thing. But did you have anything else to say before I
No, no, let's go with
go?
this.
Okay. All right. So I found it really interesting that like especially because this was recorded in like the 1800s, so Enlightenment era, like that kind of
Mm,
post Renaissance, a little too dependent and into the intellect and science and all of that.
mm,
Um, and you have the gift that death gives is is an herb that can heal people, um, unless that person is doomed to death. And so there's and the way that the the young man makes his money as a physician is people say he only needs to look at the sick immediately to know their condition, whether they will regain health or they are doomed to die. And people come from far and wide and he makes a bunch of money. So what's pointed to is like not so much, oh, he's able to heal everybody, but he's able to say with certainty who will live and who will die. So there's like they're relying on him for certainty. And there's something about the sort of rationalistic Enlightenment values of relying on the intellect or thought alone as a means of certainty. Um, I think we're sort of dealing with the after effects of that and what's left out of that equation now. That's sort of why we're struggling to make sense of things. But there's a equation. Um, there's sort of an equalness that I see between the way death is presented, both as objectively fair, everyone is equal, and then also the certainty, um, this you will live, you will die. That's the power that the son gains. He can heal people, but he can't heal everybody. But the thing he can provide for certain is will you live or will you die?
mm,
Um, and that's what we go to doctors to find out till this day. Hey, doc, I got this pain in my chest. Am I having a heart attack or is my shoulder out of joint?
mm,
You must provide me with certainty, and that's something that's developed out of Western medicine over a long time.
mm,
Um, that we think that that's the thing that's going to give us certainty. And then just to kind of wrap it up, something about it being death that gives us that certainty and enlightenment values as removing all of the subjective, all emotion, all sort of instinct, anything that gives life to the body, anything that moves us becomes unimportant. Um, and so like under Enlightenment era values, it's only the purely rational, the purely objective, the things that you can prove, the things that you can prove with like the scientific method, Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am. Like all of that seems potentially kind of bundled in here. Um, and that seems to be who, like if death is sort of standing in as the spirit of that objectifying everything, turning everything into an object, taking any kind of animistic life out of it, or even people as objects, like, oh, you just cut them open and take the piece out and then they work well again, instead of a more holistic kind of medicine like you find in, Chinese medicine or other traditional methods.
mm,
Um, yeah, I just see something about death here being this whole story being like kind of a pointer to what happens when you rely on a worldview that requires you to be that entirely objective and that entirely out of touch with the sort of living, messy reality
mm.
of God and the devil.
Yeah. And that might especially happen when people are on their deathbed or their loved one is could die. You want to know what's going to happen. Um, I don't know if I read the sort of fetish for certainty into this story. I thought almost it was different than that. I mean, maybe it can relate, but I thought of this story as, I mean, there is, you are either alive or dead at some point. Uh, and I thought, yeah, people do in terms of, and people know health is related to that, right? Like you're very healthy, you're not healthy, and there's like a spectrum of aliveness, and then there's death. Um, and the physician is the one that can that people go to for. I thought it wasn't for certainty, but just simply for healing or not. Um and that's kind of an interesting thing that death gives something with his character. Death gives this boy the ability to heal people. I don't know if that's related to this like comic kind of idea I have of the story. Um, but yeah, I thought this story was more about like fate, which is kind of like an older idea than the Enlightenment idea. It's like you know, and at this time in the early 1800s, I mean, the medicine was maybe getting a little bit better, a little bit less leeches and stuff like that, and maybe there was this kind of ideas that it would get better and better, and people would eventually be able to cheat death or be more certain with medicine and scientific medicine and things like that. But yeah, I don't know if I read the story in terms of like this being an enlightenment thing. I thought this was more like sort of cultural Christian and kind of ideas of fate, and because this is originally a folk tale, it comes from the people. I thought maybe they had a little different ideas than the sort of heady ideas from the enlightenment that you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point. I think you make a good point because it wouldn't have been this is a folktale, so it would have been it had quite a long history behind it, and the things that I'm talking about are much more recent. And he does rely on an herb in the woods, which is
Yeah,
not
right.
not
Yeah,
exactly allopathic medicine, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, but I mean, I think the thing I'm trying to sort of unearth here is that like see if I can construct some words around this. Um, and we've touched on this already, but he betrays. So death says like, if I do this, it means they will live. If I do this, it means they will die. So there's like a black and white dichotomy there that he's able to use. But as soon as his emotions get involved with it, um, then that's when everything that's like he tries to cheat fate, you could also say, if you
Yeah,
want to use the,
yeah,
the fate language. But as soon as he says, like, well, you said this means life and this means death, but what
yeah,
if I get
yeah,
creative and I just turn them around,
yeah,
does that change? No, no, dude. Like Death's trying to tell you a truth, and you're overriding that truth, that objective truth, with your emotional needs or your wants or your desires. So
yeah,
you're not seeing what's really going on there. You're not being fair the way death is fair to everyone, like it said in the beginning. So I just saw that as like that's sort of why I sort of brought up the
yeah.
Enlightenment, whatever, was that there's some sort of like it's a black and white yes or no thing that the gift he's been given is the ability to use that black and white tool as an assessment to benefit people. And when
Hmm.
he stops using that tool to benefit people and he tries to cheat, then like the whole system falls apart. And I think that to my mind, I mean, it could be mapped on, again, not to say that the storytellers are doing this, but the pattern could
Hmm.
be mapped on to the difference between like the scientific method and then like scientism as a more
Hmm.
of a belief, like, oh, well, we already know these things to be true and we don't have to look at them because we know that they're true. Um, yeah.
Yeah, there's this kind of arrogance that I know better, which
Hmm.
is a theme throughout the story with his father, right? Like,
Hmm.
I'm smart, I've had some success, I know how the world works, and I'm gonna bend it. to that. And it's no big deal. Like I'll tell God to go away. I can tell the devil go away. I can tell death to be on time. I can,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is there's like a funny thing with fate and time and everything too. And even the I think the figure of the Grim Reaper has some etymology going back to Ouranos of like the Greeks, when, at least according to Stephen Fry's book, I think, on mythology, where he gets reduced by Zeus after he try forget details, but he tries to eat his children or whatever, and then he gets
Hmm.
his genitals kind of parted from his body. I won't go too much into this, but he eventually becomes this wraith-like figure, and that's kind of this figure for time that I think eventually had something to do with the Grim Reaper that came back during something like the Middle Ages and the Black Death of Europe.
I mean, yeah, Uranus. Well, Uranus was not Saturn, but Saturn has a scythe. Kronos, Saturn and Kronos are linked.
Chronos, time,
Yeah,
Chronos.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
yeah, and Kronos had a scythe. Traditionally, even prior to the what you're saying, the traditional Reaper kind of vibe. So yeah, I can definitely see that. I hadn't heard that particular take on the slicing of the genitals and the wraith-like element of it, but that does sort of map. Um,
yeah. I think
for
that's
sure,
kind
for
of
sure, yeah.
speculative, but yeah, but in terms of this calculation, this arrogance in my calculation of what to do, I think yeah, you can see that, you can critique enlightenment and the scientism, this arrogance that we have, and I think that spirit of Icarus is very is very dangerous.
Yeah, 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 and exactly. That's exactly the sin is the same here in that had he continued to go the way he was directed, um, and said, "Well, I'm sorry, the king's going to die," um, he wouldn't have died himself. It's sort of he would have avoided it. Oh, I did want to say that something you said before I forget because I thought this was really funny. You were talking about him telling death to be on time for the baptism, and I realized like that's actually highly comedic just because when somebody dies, it's like, oh, it was their time.
Yeah,
Death, it was their
yeah,
time to go. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That's really funny. That's
yeah.
really
I mean, it's
that's
so
really good.
ironic. Yeah, you're going to die at a certain time, and this guy's thinking like, I can just do that when convenient.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, 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 for sure.
Yeah, he can father children real well, and he's a very hard worker. But man, he's a little full of something else too.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm. So what does it say? Let's see. I thought it was kind of odd that they didn't give the physician guy a good reason for wanting to save the king. Like we can guess, right? It's kind
Mm.
of you save the king, the king likes you. That's a good thing. Um, um, but it goes from the physician seeing that death is standing at his feet and so he can't be healed, to him saying, "Oh, if I could deceive death, if only I could deceive death, he will be angry, but I'm his godson, so maybe he won't mind. I'll risk it."
Mm.
Um, but I wish there was a little more clarity around why, because that would point to sort of his sin or where he was coming from. When it comes to the princess, the king's daughter, the next one, it's
Yeah.
very clear. That's kind of, he's infatuated by the princess's beauty and the prospect of becoming her husband. And so like that's what I'm talking about is like if it had said, "Oh,
Mm.
if I can save the king, then surely he will reward me." And
Mm.
my godfather would never begrudge me a reward.
Mm.
Maybe he'll turn a blind eye to it this time. That would
Yeah.
that would kind of give it a little more direction, I think.
What do you think about this though? Like, if they had had something like that and edited it out, and just relied on the fairy tale logic of this guy ascending in life. Like his father had wanted to guarantee something like success in life, and then death had said that he would. And then he made him the most famous physician in the world, and and people were talking about him. He's all over the news, and he became a wealthy man. And then the king gets sick. Is that not enough to kind of the fairy tale logic of like he's rising, and it's just he's going up to the king, like he's got big plans.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if anything, it kind of looked at through the light that the lens that you're holding up there, like in the fairy tale logic, he should save the king. Because you're right. Like it does, that does kind of, that is the trajectory that it normally goes on. So it's interesting that in this case, like he's very clearly not supposed to save the king. Like that's the direction the story, the happily ever after typical fairy tale ending story would go would be like, um, he either doesn't save the king and is rewarded for it, or he saves the king and it turns out that's what he was supposed to do. He says, "Oh, Godfather, can I?" And Death's like, "Oh, well, I'll let you do it this time, my son, but be careful," or something. There's be a little more of a back and forth, but this is really interesting because it ends so tragically, and like a good tragedy, there are multiple points leading up to that tragic end where you can see where he could have averted it. He could have made a different choice. So this is definitely both a comedy and a tragedy in an interesting way. Like it has a lot of these humorous elements and playful elements,
Yeah.
um, and yet it ends with this sort of fated bad decision that
Yeah.
all tragedies try to teach us with.
Yeah. Yeah, I started off saying this was like a comedy, and then I from what you said, I started thinking it's like a tragedy, and I'm glad you said in some way he's supposed to save the king. That's kind of like the progression of the story. The king, he's saving everybody, he's world famous, and and then the king gets sick. So yeah, in some way he's supposed to save the king, but his fate from birth or from when death became his godfather is to always stay close to death and to listen to death and to keep that agreement that they made before, right? So then isn't there something about tragedy in the larger sense in life where the things that are supposed to happen, i.e., the things we want to happen based on the manifest world, right? Like it's a, it's a, things are going well when when the king is healthy. Like that can be taken kind of in some symbolic way. But truly the thing from nature, from reality, is the king is sick, the king is supposed to die. And there's death right along with you. He's very gentle and he told you what's supposed to happen. But then of course in a tragedy, what the hero does is try to cheat death. And he had, death is like his godfather. It'll be fine. I'll have to pay a little price, but no big deal. I'm his favored godson, or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm. And the thing is, like, the thing that gets me is that, like, he's right. You know, Death says, I will overlook it this time because you are my godson. But if you
Yeah,
dare to do it again, it will cost you your neck, for I will take you yourself away with me. Um, it is interesting to see how much they make this something that Death wants to do versus something that Death has to do.
yeah,
You would think that, oh well, I can't. There has been, the king was meant to die. So there has to be so somebody else has to die in his place if he's going to live. You could see that as being the princess, and then if the princess, like it should be the physician. If he's healing somebody who's not meant to be healed, then it's kind of on him that particular fate falls. But Death does a little switch and says, okay, no, it's going to be the princess. Um, at which point, like the physician is now tempted to cheat fate even more so because now it's not just, oh, well, the king's gonna like me. It's like, oh, the king's gonna like me, and I get to marry this hot woman, and I get to be, the heir to the throne, and like it's just doubled up, and he needed to say no to it in the first place, and he needs to say no to it again, but it's harder the second time, and he doesn't do it, and then he's out of chances. So it's just
Yeah.
the switching of the candles.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that death. Yeah, I mean, I interpreted that as the death's indulgence with the physician, as kind of, yeah, he really is his godfather. He really did show up to the christening, as the story says. He did the proper thing. It wasn't just a perfunctory thing for him. Like, he was a good godfather, which is almost like, to me, that's another part of the comedic element of the story, that he agrees to it and he does it. He's a good godfather. I mean, he's the best godfather you could have ever had. I mean, he made your son world famous, rich, and like helping everybody and loved and everything. And he ascends all the way to, helping the king. I mean, but yeah, there is still the basic principle that he operates on, in, you know, and yeah, and I think it's interesting that at the end of the story with the can I mean, I think we can go back to where we are, but it
Yeah,
made me
yeah.
think of part of the dynamic of this story is like will and desire, or just things that we want as conscious humans, and then uh sort of relentless reality or fate. And it's interesting that later on he takes him to the underground cavern and shows him all the candles. And the idea of a candle, isn't it, that there is a light, but it starts off at a certain length, and it relentlessly goes down. And I guess the idea is, at your birth, it's set, right? So it's almost like this physician, you can uh, go whichever way you want in life, but your fate was already set. There's sort of some idea of that. Just
Mhm.
fate is an interesting idea in itself, because, it's unfalsifiable or something. Like, you can, whatever you choose to do, you could say you were going to always choose that in the end. um but yeah, I kind of threw a lot of things out there just now, but I think, yeah, just I like the dynamics. I don't know what what you might think of that stuff. I like the dynamics of this story, and it seems like kind of a rich story.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, fate is always a rich thing because as much
Mm,
as if fate was entirely unalterable, the king would be dead. But
yeah,
the physician pulls a fast one and like turns him around in the bed. Doesn't just feed just be like, okay, well, you say he's gonna die, but I'm gonna feed him the herb anyway. He has to literally like switch the guy and the princess, the king and the princess, they have to switch them around in the bed and feed
mm,
them, which negates fate for the king and negates fate for the princess. Um, so, you know, it kind of brings us to the ending. And again, we can kind of skip back and forth here or whatever, but it brings us to the ending where like the physician is begging for a new candle, for their fate, and death doesn't say, "I'm sorry, I can't do that. When your candle goes out, you're dead. There's nothing I can
yeah,
do." Death says, "Okay, I'm going to get you this new candle and put this old one on top, and whoops, oh no, now you're dead." Like he specifically says he wants revenge. Death desires revenge, not
yeah,
fate required payment, but death desires revenge. It's death kind of does the same thing that the physician does, where he acts out of desire rather than necessity, you know?
yeah. Or, I mean, so did I thought with the revenge, it's like with him pretending, but he always had to make the guy was always going to die, right? I mean, right then. The candle was really tiny. But I thought the revenge was him giving him hope,
Mm,
him pretending, which kind of makes sense. It's like you're gonna die at this time. Yeah. But then you messed with fate in some way, and now fate gets you back a little bit by giving you some hope at the end. So you're dying of cancer, you're gonna die, you're gonna die. But then because of some sin or something you did, at the end you have like some kind of, revival, and you think,
mm,
I almost feel like we could make some interesting movie or like short film from this or something. Like it pretty dark, I guess, but it seems interesting. Of like the patient gets up and they're like, by the way, I think there's some reality to this. People seem to have some lucidity before they pass away, but I think of that as more like a nice thing that
yeah.
nature gives you before. But anyway, um, for this kind of darker idea, yeah, there's some kind of irony to when you wake up and what you choose to do when you're revived for a little while. That maybe shows like your kind of bad intent that was always there in life, that we kind of ignored through your long sickness because we felt pity for you. um but yeah, did you not think that in this story that the yeah he the desiring revenge is just like purposely made a mistake in relighting it? Or I
Yeah.
guess you're saying that death did have the ability, according to this addendum that the Grimms later put in the story, death did have the ability to light a large get the large new candle because he.
That's how I'm reading it, just because specifically he purposefully makes a mistake. Which one you if you're doing it on purpose, it's not a mistake, but I understand what they're saying. But
Mhm,
he's doing it on purpose. He's
mhm,
purposefully making a mistake that causes the little piece to fall down and go out. So I'm taking that to mean that if he hadn't done that on purpose and he had lit the candle correctly, or he had stacked them correctly, so when one burnt out, the other one was lit by it,
mm,
um, which isn't easy to do, I'm sure, but
mm.
that maybe the physician wouldn't have died. But because death was desiring revenge, he decided to do it this way. Um,
Yeah, it could. But I'm looking at the whole paragraph. Death pretended that he was going to fulfill this wish
right, that's
and
true.
took
That's true.
hold of the.
Hmm. Well,
Like you said, fate gives you interesting options for discussion.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I would say it's just not. It's either not clear or like we're both onto a certain piece of it. Because you're
Mm.
right. Like he pretended he was going to fulfill the wish. So that is definitely the sort of darker, like false hope. Like, oh, sure, I'll do this for you. But purposefully made a mistake does imply that he actually could have fulfilled the wish. So I don't know. I don't know which way, it could kind of be, you could take it either way. And obviously, we're looking at a translated story, and nobody's going to be telling a perfect story. So there's going to be little issues with anything. But
We could speculate on why they added this part, or, how it changes the story to add this little part. I mean, do you
hmm,
have any thoughts about that?
I'm definitely down to explore that, because
Like
I'm
you.
really
Mm,
curious where it would have ended otherwise. Like, what does it end? I mean, it kind of, I read the note now. It says, the first edition, the story ended with the physician being shown the life lights of people on Earth. Um, so then the physician asking to see his own life light would have been added. And I wonder if the story would have just ended with death saying, "You're finished. Now it's your turn." Grabs him, takes him down underground into the cavern, and shows him the candles and all the lights, and explains what they are. Um, and if it just ends there, it would kind of imply that he was already dead at that point, I
I
guess.
think so. Yeah, him taking him down to the Hades kind of place, and yeah, this is reality of the of length of life. It seems like
Mhm.
he's kind of yeah dead.
Yeah, it just kind of communicates the sort of fated nature of it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and then the added on thing is like if you're telling the story, then people are like, "But what happened next?" It's like, okay, well, I guess we got to add an addendum. They have a little more interaction. People want a longer story here.
yeah. Maybe it's something like that. They don't like the some sort of ambiguous ending, and it's and it adds a little more flavor to their relationship, and to the characters.
Yeah, yeah. Although Death definitely, I was on Death's side up until the end there. Like Death seemed like a good dude all the way through up until he's like, "No, I want revenge, and I either could save you or I'm going to pretend that I could save you, but you're gonna die anyway.
But he's been
I want you to
betrayed by
hurt."
his godson. He was a good godfather until then. I mean, he was indulgent. I mean,
That's
he
true.
he was going against the principles of the universe or whatever, and letting the physician get away with saving the king. And then he did it again.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you gotta you gotta learn your lessons. You know, you gotta can't keep letting people get away with stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's interesting that yeah, there's this relationship between the physician and death, and there is maybe if you have this idea that our lives and deaths are our fate, then the physician, I mean, what is the position of the physician in that? Like, are they doing something that's unnatural?
Mm,
Plato talks
yeah.
about this in the Republic. Like,
Mm,
eh, sometimes maybe a physician can give you this idea, especially really good physicians, where in history sometimes it's kind of like related with sorcery and all that stuff. Uh, but I think there's sometimes this idea of this unnaturalness to it, like prolonging life past what's natural, sort of like being in between life and death. You're not really useful, you're not really yourself anymore, but you're not dead, and it's not because you can live again, but it's because you're afraid of death. You're afraid of
mm,
that ending. You're afraid of leave, like we all have to do, leaving your consciousness up to God, up to reality.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of those people. I don't know. I don't know a lot of the details, so I won't go into too much to try and
Mhm.
like fill them in from my imagination. But there's just the wealthy folks who are trying to live multiple hundreds of years. They want to live a long time, and it's like uh, it is. I think since people are trying to do that these days, it's definitely the question of like, at what point does our technology become unnatural? Um,
Yeah, I'm totally thinking of all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. And it is like I don't know, it is because it's not like, well, this person's choking and I could give them the Heimlich maneuver, but that would be to change their fate. I don't want to,
Yeah.
you know, I guess they're supposed to die. I mean, I could help them, but I don't want to be unnatural. Like
Yeah.
that's
But if
just
you
as
yourself
ridiculous.
were choking, you'd forgive that person for helping you.
Right. Well, and the king and the princess too, I'm sure were both very happy that they didn't end up dying from whatever sickness they had. But what is the role of the physician? Um, is such a good question, but also I don't know that it's ever answerable because the answer would depend on what's the requirements of death, what's the requirements of life. Like when does somebody need to live in order to fulfill some purpose, or whether that's giving something to the world that they haven't given yet, or whether that's developing themselves spiritually to a degree that they haven't and they need to be alive and keep working to do that, or some other thing, any other thing, like then yes, you want to prolong their life in that case so they have a chance to do whatever thing is that they're sort of meant to do. But if they're also meant to die and you try and prolong it, like I'm thinking of the sort of very tragic situation of people in a coma who aren't they're brain dead, but they're like, oh well, maybe someday they'll come back, and you don't know. And how long do you keep them in that sort of vegetative state, or how long do you, I don't know, take some kind of drug that extends your life? Um, when should we die? What's the point of life? Like we'd have to know the answers to that in order to say for sure what was right and wrong, beyond just like, well, that feels creepy. It feels creepy to let somebody choke when we could save them, and it feels creepy to let somebody like do something, I don't know, this eat cow adrenal glands in order to live another
Yeah.
like another couple hundred years. Like that's creepy. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Um,
Why, isn't that
yeah.
part of it? Like we kind of like having a relatively decent life and mind. You have a sense of it, and we can debate it, and we do have to, and not everybody will agree, but there is some sort of I have the sense that both those things you said are creepy, are weird, are just not quite right. I can't exactly say exactly why in every case, but yeah, I think we do have this sense, and that's maybe, you know, from nature in some way, that we're not totally corrupted by honestly weird ideas.
Yeah. Oh, that okay. So that has me thinking like there's this vague sense. There's some information that we're getting from nature of like where, this would be too inconsiderate to let them choke and die. This is just going too far. It's refusing what it means to be human to too far of a degree.
Yeah.
Um, so that sort of implies a flow of information on some unconscious level. There's some
Mm,
sort of knowing or awareness
mm,
that's present, right?
mm,
So like what would it take to bring that up out of the unconscious, out of the semi-conscious, whatever, into like to have whatever that information flow is run through us consciously?
mm,
Like what? Because then, like to my mind, so one of the questions I have is like, for these people that do want to live forever, like why do you want to live forever?
mm,
What are you hoping to do with your life? What do you think death is? What do you assume death is? Because nobody knows what death is. We can't
mm.
we can't say for sure. If you think you're sure, then you're just really involved in that story for some reason. Um, but like, what is that? And if there is a way to live where, at least for my own sake, I can feel that information flow from nature, I can
Mm,
sense like I should care about people, and I should try and prolong my life, but I also should be ready to die at some point. And
mm.
and there's a corruption that I want to avoid. And there are there are ways that I can fall off the sort of right way of living. But what is the right way of living? And to what end can I follow that right way of living so that I know when I'm supposed to die, even if not
Mm,
like, oh, it's going to be this date, but like, oh, I think I'm done. I did the thing. I whatever it was, like I have done well and I'm ready to die. And
mm.
you die happy, whether surrounded by people or alone. Like it doesn't, there's no standard that guarantees that, but you die fulfilled and satisfied. And how do you live every day to bring that sense of rightness and embody it and enact it so that when you die, you die well. And then you're not afraid of dying. You know you're living well, so you know that when you die, you'll be dying well as well. You're not living for some perceived future where something's going to happen that then you're going to be
Yeah.
happy, and then that's going to
Yeah.
give your life meaning.
That's
It's like
right.
if your
Yeah.
life has meaning right now and you just follow that, then when you die, like I, I don't know. I don't know. That seems a healthier. I would rather try my best to live a meaningful life than try my best to live a long life.
Yeah. Yeah.
An elongated life, artificially enhanced one.
Yeah, and I think the answer that you're saying of living fully in the present, I think that's what some other wise people have said. I think Dostoevsky said something like that. And he did have, like, interestingly, he did have an experience as a relatively young man where he thought he was going to get executed and he got saved at the last minute. It's pretty crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he later wrote, we think he later wrote what his experience was into the experience of a character in one of his novels. But yeah,
Wow. I did not know that.
yeah,
I mean, near death is whether, medically or just psychologically, emotionally, you're expecting it to happen. Like that can be very um enlightening
yeah,
in the good way, and that it can really bring stuff into enough contrast that you're able to tell what's important in a way that you maybe couldn't before.
yeah, yeah. I think so. I was moved by that character's thought, like in the novel, uh, he he's about to be shot, and he looks at like a church steeple, I think, and he sees like a glint of light or something like that. We're kind of imagining he has this very intense sensory kind of experience. He's definitely not in his head. Um,
Hmm.
and he feels at peace, and he says, "In a minute, I will be part of all that."
Wow,
Yeah.
that's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What story is that? Do you remember?
God, I don't know. I gotta look it up. I'll try to look it up and put it in the show notes. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's yeah, some story by Dostoevsky. Yeah, maybe a short story.
fair enough. I'll just have to read all my Dostoevsky.
Yeah. But but another thing you were saying about living in the present, I was thinking also of, I love Socrates's definition of philosophy, which I think at its best is the search for wisdom or the love of wisdom, which is what that philosophia means. Um, and he defined philosophy as learning how to die.
Hmm.
And to me, that's probably the best definition. And I sort of, in my mind, differentiate like what the philosophy that I like from the philosophy that I don't so much like in terms of that. If I feel like reading it, thinking about it, talking about it with others, living it in some way, if it helps me to feel present and like I could die at any time, that's real love of wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I mean, I think an intimacy with death like that is is helpful if you're not um obsessed about it, or it's not
Yeah.
overpowering things, but like I don't know, there's Gurdjieff, the Russian Armenian mystic that I will occasionally go off about. One of his big points he makes in his massive book is that one of the few hopes left for humanity, and it's a very interesting book. This isn't like him making a case for it.
Mm,
With him, it's all allegorical. You have to think about it from five different angles. So I don't want to be like,
mm,
he's saying this is true. So
mm,
that's to oversimplify. But one of
mm,
the points he makes in the book is like one of the best hope is for humanity to have something implanted in them that is always reminding them that they are going to die, and that everybody else that they lay their eyes on, they're going to die as well. And to be constantly reminded of that fact over and over again is sort of his remedy for the troubles that plague us, to shorthand the
I
monster book.
completely
But
agree with that. I mean,
yeah,
I think that's how you stay close to nature.
interesting.
I mean, do you not think it's so, I mean, this gets to me in a good way. Like, humans have all these ideas, all this dialogue, all this thinking. How come we're afraid to die and animals apparently are not?
Hmm.
Like, if we're so smart. because I don't have that much knowledge of this, but it seems like animals and other mammals, that even chimpanzees and things that are pretty close to us, dogs, they know how to die. They're not upset about it. They go off into the woods, they lay down. I saw this very moving scene in Chimp Empire. Do you know that Netflix series?
Mm-mm.
Oh, you might want to check it out. Do you have Netflix?
No, but I've been looking into ways to figure that out. So I'll take the recommendation. Please continue.
Yeah, and there's so this one alpha male who actually gets dethroned, and it's kind of a sad thing where he's kind of like injured the rest of his life. But anyway, he it's time for him to die, and they actually get this on film, which it's almost should you do that? But you know, they're I'm sure they're at a respectful distance. They have good cameras, but they show him, and so it's time to die, and he goes off by himself into the woods, and he lays down in this kind of comfortable place, and he like covers himself with branches and leaves and stuff, and then he passes.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Yeah, because at first I was wondering where you were going to go with this because to my mind, like I'll put it this way, animals will fight being murdered, whether that's by humans or other animals or whatever.
Yeah.
But I see the distinction you're making. So
Yeah.
like that became very clear pretty quickly. Um and yeah, I think there's a lot. I had a dog when I was growing up, same thing. When he was getting old and he'd hurt his back and we still don't, as far as I know, we still don't know what happened to him. He ran away towards, as he was older, he got out of the house and he went somewhere and like we never found him. And I think it was something like that because he was having quite a hard time with things at that point.
Jesus.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, Rascal, was his name.
Oh,
But but you hear that with elephants too, like and a lot of other creatures that like if they're able to know when it's time, they will start to prepare. Um, and I imagine that happens since most death in the animal kingdom comes about tragically. There's not a lot of long-lived, especially in the wild, you don't necessarily live that long. But to the extent that you do, you probably are a little more ready to just lay down and pass peacefully. And yeah, you do hear about that with some people, but you don't hear about like you would, as you were saying, given that we think of ourselves so highly, you would think we would be able to sort of work out a way to do that more often, given how long our lives are, given how secure our lives are, given how little struggle that we have with predators and disease and accident, comparatively. Um, you think we would have worked a way to like have that happen more often, but so many people, I think, at least struggle with the idea of death. If, as
yeah.
you were saying kind of earlier on, there is this moment as you're dying, at least not that I know from experience, but I've heard when you're dying that there is like a letting go moment that
I've heard that
happens.
too.
And sort of like kind of a something that internally, experientially that happens for people, but we don't. Our culture doesn't embody that. Our culture embodies such a fear of death, fighting against it all the time. Want to be young forever, want to live forever, cannot abide old people, cannot abide sick people, cannot abide handicapped people, cannot abide any kind of deviation from the norm or problems or anything that implies death. And what are we doing? What's the point? I mean, if it was genuinely working such that like that helped us be a happier, healthier species, then okay, but clearly it's not.
No, yeah. Yeah, we're in denial. I mean, I think it's very good to have certain good medicine, good shelter, all that stuff. We don't need to live outside and die from bacterial infections at age 7, 10% of the population or whatever. But yeah, we have to like you're like I think Gurdjieff was saying, and I remember even in high school in our history book, it had like a little quote from some samurai manual or something and said, always remember death
Mm.
is ever present. Of course, with their lifestyle, it had a slightly different kind of meaning and keep you on your toes. But I think for all of us, it's literally true, right? I could die right now. Like
Yeah.
either of us, we don't know what will happen. We're always making plans. We have no idea what will happen. A meteor could hit the Earth. We just don't know.
Yeah.
And
In fact, today is a friend of mine's birthday who he passed several years ago now. Very unexpectedly. He was trying to change a sink in the bathroom with his wife and just something exploded in his heart and like she was doing compressions and 9/11 came right away, but nothing. He was gone. And I hold that as that kind of a memory when I managed to remember, you know. So
and
David, we're thinking of you, buddy. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, don't you, we sometimes talk about religion on this show. Don't you think that any good religion has to have a strong element of this, some figure, some god or something, some practices around death? I mean, it's gonna happen. We'll see it. You know, we're healthier and happier, I think, if we embrace it to a healthy extent, a good relationship. I'm not saying to be morbid, but
Yeah. No, like a Godfather.
yeah,
Somebody that's taking care of us. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just think I agree. Like the word religion can be problematic for some people because they think it means structure and dogma and all of that. But if we're just talking, and I hear you that, you know, this is what I hear you saying, we're talking about like a just some sort of spiritual direction or story or guidance to support us in being alive and being human, then yeah, for sure, we need something um, that guides us, that helps us make sense of the fact that we're going to die, and in a way that isn't pie in the sky and that isn't
yeah,
dogmatic and that isn't
mm,
moralistic, but really gives our lives meaning in a way that helps us live more fully, um, so that when it does come, we're ready, you know?
this story. Don't you think it's? I'm thinking now. So the main character, the physician, he's a person that has a really close connection to the figure of death. And it's interesting that you could say, and he therefore can heal people. It's like I'm not sure what the logic is exactly, but um, I think it might be interesting to look into that. But just in general, maybe it says something about if you, or maybe I could say this, someone that heals people and gives them comfort and can help themselves, he gets rich. Through that in life, they have to have some kind of close connection to death. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I will say I think there's definitely a how would I put this? There's like a poetic
Yeah, yeah.
mythos level relationship between healing and death.
Mm,
They're not separate. They're very they're parts of the same continuum.
yeah,
And like if you are going to work with healing people, you're going to be more effective and helpful to the extent that you are comfortable with death.
yeah, yeah,
Because if you're not comfortable with death, you're not going to show up for situations that need strong attention and need your someone with the ability to face
yeah.
that the intensity of that moment. You know?
Yeah, you're not going to be present, right? You're just going to life at all cost, and you might evolve into some weird monster kind of.
Mhm. 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 Yeah. Yeah.
But then, yeah, you can't. You have to know what it is, right? You have to know it. One thing I think about the meaning of this story is people have to know their nature. There is no changing in this story. The guy at the beginning is given a gift of three possible supernatural godfathers. He has to know that, what gift he's been given, but then he kind of tries to take advantage of it. And then his boy is a physician, but he tries to heal people beyond what they're supposed to be healed. He tries to become whatever, a necromancer or whatever. I don't know what. There is no word like that, right? We have no word in society. A physician is supposed to help naturally heal people, but not in an unnatural way, prolong their life, not cheat death. And then
Mhm.
that's when he's taken out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to the word necromancer or the idea of necromancy is an interesting thing because it carries such a dark, even if you're just looking at like fantasy books, Lord of the Rings style things like the necromancer, the dark sorcerer, the one who summons up the skeletons to serve him and all of that. And and yet I think if I understand traditionally, like when the word was being used and people believed it was a real thing in history, I
Mm,
think it was more like a seance or a medium or something like somebody who could speak,
mm,
who could contact the dead and speak to the dead and get, divinatory advice from the dearly departed,
mm,
and if you go as far back, if you sort of take if that's true, which I'm definitely no expert in the etymology of necromancy,
mm,
but to the extent that that's true, like that's a very common practice in a lot of more animistic or less developed cultures, or even more. I mean, China to this day has ancestor worship, tomb sweeping day. You take care of the ancestors, you take care of your lineage, um, and the tradition that I've been involved with from Africa, ancestors are a huge part of that. This sort of shamanic tradition. And that's true of almost every quote unquote shamanic tradition in the world, and there's some sort of healthy relationship with the other side, with the ancestors. And
mm,
and and I think if anything, that creates a healthier attitude towards death because you're
mm,
like, well, when I die, I'll be over there, and there's at least somebody that can help us. If you take care of me, make me offerings. Everyone wants to give me some water, pour out some water in my name,
mm,
remember me, tell my stories. Like I'll show up and I'll help you out. And there's this interweaving of like on the spiritual level, whatever the heck's going on there, on a psychological level. The sort of hereditary behavior becomes explained and clarified, and you're like, oh, I remember my uncle used to be angry all the time, and oh man, I'm really behaving like him, and I see where that led, and I don't want to do that, and it like kind of helps just on the psychogenetic level, kind of helps understand your structures of your personality and all that. Um, and it helps you not be so afraid of death, I think, because it death becomes a line that you cross and you come back, or you cross and then maybe you cross another line on the other side, but like you're not gone, you're still connected.
mm.
And if you don't think that it's either oblivion or heaven or hell, that's a lot easier to just be like, okay, it's a bath I'm sliding into. I don't know what's on the other side, but here I go. Or slide, whee, like a
I
water
mean, I
slide.
think that kind of relationship is very good, and I would almost want to see us have more of that type of relationship. Um, but I thought, can that not be taken too far to where this is akin to a relation with God, where one wants to gain special power from the relationship? Like one, instead of honoring the ancestors and having a connection to them and feeding them, which means sacrificing in some way something that you could have eaten and you're giving it to them.
Mhm.
You're enlivening them in some way. You're lowering the barrier between the dead and you, and therefore you're seeing yourself as being dead in the future. Um, but isn't there a way with where you can kind of, yeah, you can look to try to get worldly power, or special knowledge that you can use. I thought that was maybe something like the idea of the necromancer
Mm.
um, in the fantasy world or something like that,
Yeah. I mean,
in
for sure in the fantasy world, for sure
mm,
that's, there's they're often painted as very power hungry, and sort of. I mean, but look at this, right? Like the the sort of stereotype of the necromancer is um, a magician, somebody with some magical powers who wants servants, whether that's servants around their castle, an army, whatever, who are skeletons, who are undead that they control. And I mean, how often do we do that to other people in our lives? We see them as like, oh, they need to behave in this way. They're not alive, they're dead. We make them dead.
Hmm.
Um, we sort of we're all sort of necromancers in that way, in that we are trying to trying to control the image that we're projecting onto the other person of how they're supposed to be. And if they just be like this, then I would be happy. And why don't they just do what I want them to?
Hmm.
Um, I don't know.
Yeah, not
I'm
looking
amusing
at
myself.
things as what they're supposed to be, but what we want them to be.
Yeah, yeah, not seeing other people as, individuals with their own interior world that we don't have access to and who are constantly going to surprise us, and that we need to relate to them as free beings and
Hmm.
not insist that they be something that we want them to be because it would make us more comfortable for whatever reason. I mean, a lot of that's unconscious behavior, but it's still there. We still do it.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, you could even go so far as to say like uh businesses that exploit their workers to, on any level, whether that's like gig economy, food delivery, or corporate, overlords or whatever. Like they want people to be reliable cogs in their machine, and they don't relate to them as living beings. So they've turned them into objects, to kind of come back to our earlier objectifying thing.
Hmm.
Um, so there's like a necromantic element to that, in that you want to summon up the skeletons, what's left, the physical remains, the physicality that used to be a living being and is now just an object. You want to control that object with your will. You want to put your will into the object that used to be the other person.
Hmm.
That's the dark side of necromancy.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas, you know, in a more animistic or shamanic thing, like it's the exact opposite, in that the you're not involving yourself at all with the physicality, the bones, the spirits, whatever. You're not summoning them to make them do things. You're relating to them as if they were still alive. You're relating to them as
Hmm.
as sort of beings or forms, some sort of center of consciousness outside of yourself that you can relate with.
Hmm.
That's the more traditional method, as I understand it, which is, hmm,
Yeah, and that seems more like a spiritual way of being and kind of accepting fate and things to act as they're supposed to and as they want to.
hmm, yeah. And coming back again to what we were saying before, of like living in the now and trying to live the best life you can as the means of ensuring a good death or a good fate, as opposed to trying to force something to happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's a good way to end this one, unless you have anything else you want to add.
No, I'm not going to try and force anything.
Well, sounds good. Yeah, so this was the Godfather death, and yeah. Well, thanks. Glad we
Yeah,
could talk about it today.
likewise. Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. It was a fun read.
Yeah.